Welcome back, sir. How are you, man? Welcome. Those are great socks. Those are really great socks.
Oh, yeah, a wee bit of the Paul Smith.
Yeah, they're such lovely socks.
I love them. I love good socks. I don't know why. I've many happy years I've worn jolly socks.
I'm wearing the Misfits socks.
Yeah.
That's my socks today, the Misfits.
Oh.
Fine punk rock band. Just saying. Billy, the last time you were in Canada, you traveled across the Arctic.
Yes.
What was that experience like?
It was fantastic. The Granada television came to me with lots of ideas about... There was also peculiar ones, like the biggest earwig in the world lives in Sardinia or someplace. Would I go and look for it? And all these weird stuff. And then they said the Northwest Passage is open for so many weeks a year. Would you like? I said, that's the one. So we started at Nova Scotia and went up in Newfoundland and up and over and thing and down and then to British Columbia. 10 weeks. It was brilliant.
That seems like it's not easy to do, though.
It's not easy. That's the good thing. That's the good thing, because it's not. It's kind of unpleasant sometimes. You know what I mean? Sure. I mean, you get to these towns and you go, holy shit! How can you do this? You get to these wee towns where half the population works for the government and the other half are unemployed. So the employed half pay the unemployed half. It seems there's a peculiar sense involved in it.
It's a tough economy. It's a tough country. It's a hard country to kind of build and live in.
Yeah, and I met a guy in Iqaluit. He worked for the fire service and he was Scottish. And I said, what brought you here? He said, oh, I can't remember. He had some bizarre reason he arrived there. And he joined the fire service, a firefighter, married a local girl. And he had his wee boy with him, looks like a wee Inuit boy. And I said, does he like his blubber? I said, because I had, it sounds racist, but I had just had blubber that day. And I loved it. And I said, does he enjoy blubber? He said, oh yeah, he's a real Scots-Eskimo.
Think about that young kid that you were. Were you a welder? Is that what you were?
Yes.
I think as a welder, did you ever imagine that you would end up in the Northwest Passage being the famous guy telling a story?
Do you know something I did?
Do you have the ability to see in the future, or are you lucky now that you guessed?
No, it's just that my father was in the Air Force, and there was always photographs around the house of him in India and Africa and places. And I always kind of thought it was an essential part of my life to go out and see places. I didn't know how I was going to do it. I just kind of assumed I would do it. And it happened. And I think there's a lot of life is like that. If you just presume you're going to do things, L-O, exclamation mark. And behold, it happens. Like if you want to play guitar and you keep thinking about it, you will do it eventually. You'll be unable not to do it. You know what I mean?
You believe in the secret. Put it out in the universe and the universe will give it back to you.
It gives it back to you. It's just but you have to keep doing it. You can't just do it one Wednesday and hope it happens. You know, if you keep doing it all of the time. And I'll tell you another thing, this is great, this has worked for me several times, and it'll work for you. If there's something you really want, now this takes 3 years, right? If there's something what you do is you get like a business card, size a piece of paper, and write on it 3 things that you really want to happen to you in those 3 years. Write them down and put it in your wallet. If you carry a wallet that you have your credit cards in, that you use every day, slip it in. You don't need to see the whole card, you just need to see a bit of it sticking up. So as every time your wallet opens, it's there. And it will work on your brain, and it will happen for you. Now, don't set your sights too low. You know, if you want to be the president of Tibet, put it on it. You know, and believe me, now remember where you were when you heard it. It's happened for me. It's happened for me twice.
Who taught you how to do that? Who told you about that?
A Buddhist guy. Well, it was a guy, he wasn't like a Buddhist wandering about in robes shouting Om every 5 seconds. He was a guy who had done Buddhist meditation. And he had joined this other society called Avatar. And I don't know much about that, but it was he who told me. And I tried it, and it worked. And then I tried it again, and it worked again. And I told my pal, and it worked for him. But you have to be patient. It takes 3 years.
You're going to start your own religion, and never mind Scientology, it'll be Connolly is what it'll end up being, right? So when you were a kid, you thought that it was an essential part of travel, but your life had there was nothing in your life that made you think that you were actually going to be able to become this guy, was there?
No, the predictions weren't there. The signs weren't there.
Because you had the kind of upbringing that, from the outsider's perspective, would crush most people.
Yeah.
And you survived that, and more than
survived. Well, it's funny, I went to see that John Lennon film the other night, Nowhere Boy.
Yeah.
And they were all saying, wasn't it hellish? And I was thinking, that's nothing.
Well, but for people who don't know your life, I mean, it's been 10 years, roughly 10 years, since you and your wife published a book where you talk about your upbringing, including all the things you had to go through.
Yes.
Molestation at the hands of your father. Like, it crushes most people, Billy.
It doesn't. It doesn't crush most people. You only hear the crushing stories.
Okay, so then tell me about how you were able to kind of get through that.
There are examples of good all around you, you know. Even if in your own house things aren't going so good, you've got your friends' houses. You've got proof everywhere that this isn't normal, you know. Jackie Maxwell, Frankie McBride, all my pals lived in happy houses that I loved to be in. Their parents joked with them and had a laugh. Mine didn't joke with me and have a laugh. You know, the biggest problem I had was a school teacher called Flora MacDonald, who was a nightmare. So I just left my nightmare house and would go to school to this other ugly nightmare. And she was a bitch, you know. Yeah. And she really was a biatch. Wait, I'll tell you this. My daughter was graduating at Glasgow University, and I went along with strawberry tarts and champagne. We're all standing. And a guy came along with a sports jacket with the leather elbows, and he said, I believe we have someone in common in our lives. I believe my aunt taught you. And I said, oh, really? What was her name? He said, Flora MacDonald. It didn't even leave his lips. And I said, she was a bitch. He said, well, she was a little peculiar. I said, no. Wasn't anything peculiar about her. She was a bitch.
So you have this, you know, nightmare in your house, a nightmare at that point.
This woman dreamed long division and came in and hit me with it every day. Long division, Connolly.
Well, where did the comedy come from? Where did the I'm a funny guy come from?
I think all comedy comes from there. I think comedy comes from a dark place. Or not so much dark, it comes from uncomfortable places. I'm sure you as a kid, you did things like, we would go camping, my friends on bicycles, with these terrible tents that weren't even waterproof, no ground sheet, a blanket, bottles of water, tins of beans. The rain can splosh you. Imagine going camping in Scotland. You have to be off your head. Yeah. It's like camping under a bloody waterfall. Yeah. You know? Oh, this is great. Huddle. We're all cowboys. Light a fire and we'll yodel. Well, it would be deeply uncomfortable, and you'd have to be rescued by people.
You're complaining about being in a callow in Scotland. Sounds like no fun.
In doorways at 4 o'clock in the morning, shivering and wet. 2 days later, you'd be telling your friends about it. You'd be peeing yourself laughing, saying, oh, dear, remember the wave came in and hit George? Do you remember your rucksack floated down the river? Oh, laugh!
Stick around. We're going to answer the age-old question, who's the greatest comedian banjo player of all time? We'll do anthropology with Billy Connolly right after this. Back here on the program, Billy Connolly with this time for anthropology. Mr. Connolly, what makes you laugh?
Robin Williams.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, who has a worse fake Scottish accent, Robin Williams or Mike Myers?
Neither of the two. The worst fake Scottish accent ever is in an old American golf movie, and the guy plays a golf pro with a big beard, and he's always talking about hickories and mashy nibliks and things in the golf house. And he has a line in the movie, and it's, There was a dearth of mirth on the 5th of 4th and the 4th and 5th.
Just angered you?
It's angered me all my life. I saw it when I was about 9.
What makes you most angry then, aside from that?
General cruelty, I suppose.
Who's a better banjo player, you or Steve Martin?
Steve Martin.
What's your favorite folk song?
Ooh, The First Time Ever I Saw Your Face.
It's a beautiful song. What's the best thing that you have hanging on your wall at home?
A picture of Elvis Presley.
From where?
It's a guy called David Ovington painted it in England, and it was a big, big painting when his leg was out like this, and he was always trying to get me to buy it, but it was too big for my house. Mm-hmm. And then one day, the head of Elvis Presley arrived in the mail. He just cut it out with a razor like that. and he sent it to me. He said, "This is a little present for you. If it's any interest to you, the body is now the Bee Gees."
What's the worst meal you've ever had?
Oh. I was performing in Newcastle, north of England, and I wanted to go for a curry, and I knew a great Indian restaurant, but the guy, in those days, it was Jerry Rafferty and I were in a band, and in those days...
Like Jerry Rafferty? Jerry Rafferty?
Yeah, Stuck in the Middle with You and all that. Yeah,
oh,
we used to be in a band.
But and so you just went looking for curry?
We said we're going for a curry, but in those days, with the club we were playing in, the guy who ran the club was putting us up for the night, and he said, "Curry, look no further. I make a wonderful curry." And he made a curry from corned beef and brown rice, and there was puddles in it. I will never forget it.
What's the one animal you think should become extinct?
Wasp.
Nice to see you, man. Thanks for coming back.
Oh, it's always a pleasure, George.
Connolly, everybody. We'll be right back.